Okay, picking up from where we left off, I'm going to give a brief overview of what things look like. If you're a little bit lost, I would suggest, and you want to know a little bit more about collision meshes, I would suggest looking at the previous video where I explain importing meshes into Blender from Fallout. So here's your Havoc mesh. Basically, your collision mesh is right here on this table. This is our default table that we've set up. So basically what you've got here is it's just this little Havoc mesh is an outline of it. And if you notice, well, I'll go into this further. Basically, a little bit later, but basically what you've got is you've got this, and if you select this and you go under this little logic button over here, it's a little purple face on the left hand side. You'll see under properties there's a bunch of data here. Not all of it's super important, although some of it is. It's not terribly important stuff. You'll find out that later on we'll probably do this a little bit differently than they set it up. Okay, so the way I was taught to do it anyway, and it seems to work pretty darn good. And I don't believe all of this is important, but you know, with a little more experimentation, I may actually do an updated video later on about this. Okay, moving on with this. If you grab the table and you move it around, you'll notice the Havoc data moves with it. If you grab, you'll notice that the collision mesh moves with it. If you grab the collision mesh and you move it around, you'll see this little line attaching to it. If you leave it over here, you can see that it's pretty well parented to that. It has a parent-child relationship. This would be the parent, this would be the child. Okay, so in this case, what we would want to do, we can actually do an Alt-O and clear origin, and it'll go right back to it. If you go Alt-O, you can clear the origin, and it'll actually change the origin back to its default, and it'll go all the way back to that table. Kind of a cool little trick. But you'll notice if I go and pull this again, boom, it's still parented. Okay, so now to clear a parent, you'll actually select both. And if you want to unparent something, you would go, well, you go Control P, clear parent, and if you notice, that's now out there, right? Because we moved it. But and the same goes for this. So if we had not moved that, it would probably be right where this table is, but we cleared the origin. So and in fact, here's something we can do. If we go back, we select both, and we go Control A and do apply scale and rotation object data, and then we clear origin. It does actually do exactly what I was talking about. It will, well, hold on. Clear parent, sorry. And then you notice it stays in the same spot. But if you move this, you won't see that little line. If you move this, the collision mesh won't move with it, okay? So this must be parented to it. To parent this back onto that, you'll do that, and then you'll hit Control P, okay? And notice now we're back to where the collision mesh moves with it, and you can see that little line there, okay? So I'm actually going to open up a custom mesh now, and we'll probably move on with collision data. I just did want to give an overview of it. Actually, one more thing before we go. I think I'll actually separate this into two tutorials, and then we'll move on with this, because I really want to make sure that this is clear to people, because this was kind of a difficulty for me, and there's a difficult spot because there just weren't a lot of tutorials explaining on how to go from one point to another and then get everything out. Okay, so this may become actually a 5-part tutorial set. So let's go ahead and open up our table around in NifScope, and I'll just give an overview of that. Okay, so here's your BS fade node. Again, this is fallouts. Excuse the neighbors, they're very, very noisy, and I don't have soundproof walls. BS Fade node is Fallout and Bethesda and Obsidian's. It will be their root node, okay? And I will show how to set this up later on. Very important stuff. Now, if we go under collision data, this is where we want to be for this tutorial. This red outline here is your collision data, okay? And this is your tri-strip data. Your table is the tri-strip data, and you'll notice I can't really select this red outline, okay? But if I go into here, I can actually edit all that. And this looks like it's a mop tree shape. Now, to explain the difference between mop tree and it's basically you use a triangle mesh for this, a triangle collision mesh for this, and it's kind of a complex system because it's probably not the best, but it's pretty good. You have also convex and box, and then you have sphere, okay? For your collision meshes, box is very, very, very generic. It's just a box that surrounds it. I would use it only for pipes and things. Sphere, I don't really know what I would use that for. And when you set these up, well, I'll get further into that later actually. But a mop tree, you just create an outline of it. You make a very, very generic mesh, okay? When you're doing this. So if you go into here, you'll notice that you have matte stone. This is very, very important. This is your Havoc material. I will explain how to do that. That's what you create in your logic in Blender, okay? And if you go into here, you double click it, you can actually change it in here and fix it if you've made a mistake. So for instance, this table is metal, so you know, I might make it metal instead of stone as it is set by default. I notice everything kind of sets as stone as default, which is kind of strange, but you know, and if it's for instance, I'm going to be doing a wine glass in the next tutorial. I would set that as glass, okay? So just some things about Havoc and all this kind of stuff, and you'll notice that the data in here is actually tri-strip data for this. That's because it's a mesh that has been, it's basically kind of like a clone. It's just a generic clone of the table, or just, you know, and the reason for this is because convex is used most of the time for these kind of meshes, but the problem with convex is that they'll screw up if you have indentations like this. So you never, you know, if you have, you know how this is smaller and then it spans out to the legs, convex would try to make up for that. So what you need is you need a mop for anything that has an indentation. So most of your objects, most of your clutter, you're going to want to do that for, but for other shapes, maybe like your static meshes that are just going to sit around and do nothing, not going to have a lot of things going on, then you may want to set just a convex mesh over it, something very generic. Make it as easy on the game by simplifying your geometry, okay? The game is not perfect and it's certainly flawed, as everyone knows, so make sure to make it easy on the game engine, okay? So with this, this will conclude part 1 of our tutorial, and then I will split off and start the second part in a few moments. Thanks for watching.